host, Andrea Fallon, midwife, child health nurse, NDC practitioner, holistic sleep coach, and most importantly, mum of two. And today I'm really looking forward to sharing with you a bit around the idea that you need to teach your baby to link their sleep cycles, because this is something that I hear all the time and it is a bit of a myth, and I'm looking forward to busting this one and talking about what actually, to consider instead. So I'm going to dive straight in. Let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. Feel free to write any questions in the comments and I will, come back and answer any questions you have. I'm looking blurry on my screen. I don't know if it's looking blurry for you, hopefully not, but I'm not sure why. It was perfectly fine before. Hopefully it's all good. Okay, cool. So I think, firstly, the idea that we need to teach our babies to link their sleep cycles. This is something that's brought up often after the 4-month sleep regression, when the sleep cycles change. So sleep cycles and how they all work is called the sleep architecture. So the sleep architecture changes around 4 months. The way our babies sleep changes, so they go from just having periods of like dream sleep and deep sleep, like these 2 cycles, that's all they go through, to having longer cycle overall, where they go through periods of dream sleep and then lighter sleep and then deeper sleep, more in line with what adults do. And so what happens with this change is they spend a little bit more time in a lighter phase of sleep and are more prone to waking up. And so often then one sleep cycle in total is around 45 minutes. There is quite a bit of variation, but around 45 minutes. And so sometimes a little one will start waking every 45 minutes, and people are sort of saying, well, that's because they haven't learned to link their sleep cycles, that they've had a change, you need to teach them, and that's what's going to improve sleep. So that's the theory behind the saying. That's where a lot of people are coming from with that comment. But I just want to explain a little bit around that, like I said, and bust it a little bit. So I think the biggest thing is that we need to challenge the idea that we need to teach our babies to sleep. I mean, that's the big thing. So when you hear someone say you need to teach your baby to link their sleep cycles, well, let's think about that. That's saying that sleep is a skill. And it's something that we need to teach our babies. And there's a whole lot around that as well, around the concept of the good mother, and good mothers have babies that sleep, and that you need to teach your baby to sleep, or you're doing them a disservice. So that all comes into play here as well, which also adds on a layer of difficulty, I think, makes it even harder, as if it's not hard enough if you've got a baby waking every 45 minutes, that then you've got this whole idea that you're not a good mum somehow because they're doing that, which is just terrible. But anyway, I digress. So let's just think about this more. So the idea that we need to teach our babies to sleep. So if sleep is a skill and it's something that our little ones need to learn, as parents, like I said, it's then becomes something we feel like we need to teach. Now, the problem is that sleep is not a skill. It's a biological function of the body. It is under the control of the natural sleep system within the body, and it's not under our conscious control. So I can't click my fingers and say, okay, I'm going to go to sleep now, sitting here, this morning, quite full of energy, had a good night's sleep last night. So, click my fingers, yep, I'm just going to go to sleep. Doesn't work like that. It's not under our conscious control. The conditions within our body have to be right, and our sleep regulators need to be, at a certain level. It's a bit complicated, I won't go too much into the technical side of it, but, our sleep regulators have to be supporting us to be able to sleep. And even if I could fall asleep, the likelihood of me actually staying asleep at this time, 9 a.m. here in Perth, is pretty unlikely. So first, let's just get away from the idea that sleep is a skill, okay? Because actually when we get away from that idea, it helps us move away from a lot of the sleep training advice, which when we look deeper, has its root in this idea that sleep is a skill and we need to teach them and all this kind of thing. Now, the next thing is, I'll talk a bit about this actual sleep regulation system. So there's two parts to it. The first is the circadian rhythm, and the second is the sleep-wake homeostat, or the sleep pressure. Let's call it sleep pressure for ease. It's a lot easier to say. So we've got those two parts of the sleep regulation system, and that's really what is controlling when we fall asleep, how quickly we fall asleep, how long we sleep for, the quality of our sleep, all of that, that biological process is what's controlling those things, not whether we've taught our babies to somehow link these cycles. And I guess the other thing, just to, highlight this point further, was that if sleep was a skill, when newborns came out, when they're here with us, they wouldn't know how to sleep, and we would have to somehow teach them. But obviously that's not the case. Newborns do sleep, and they sleep quite a lot. So I just want to address that first and foremost, because when you think about it, it's actually a little bit of a silly idea that it's something that we could teach. And I know that pressure is really there, and often that pressure even comes from health professionals to parents, and they think, oh my gosh, this is something I've got to do. And catnapping also often comes under this. When babies catnap, parents will be told, oh, that's because they can't link their sleep cycles. But, we know that is not true either. So when we're talking about catnapping, and if that's your main concern, maybe your baby's not waking very often at night, maybe you're experiencing short naps of like one sleep cycle, we know actually the function of naps is really just to take the edge off that sleep pressure, which naturally builds throughout the day, so that we're nice and tired by bedtime. And the whole function of a nap is just to take the edge off, so the sleep pressure is still nice and high at bedtime. But when we try and link sleep cycles for our babies, and we try and extend the naps, that can interfere with that sleep pressure. And so then you can have problems with this sleep regulation system getting all out of whack. So the whole catnap thing, nothing wrong with it. Baby is taking the sleep they need, just to almost like, I guess you could call it like a release valve, on the sleep pressure. The cat nap or any nap is just a release valve, letting some of that sleep pressure off, and then, allow it to still continue to build for nighttime. So yeah, cat napping, not to worry about. And I think the thing is that there's a few factors that will help babies sleep, like to continue to sleep throughout their, after one sleep cycle. Sorry, I'm not getting my words out here. Transition from one sleep cycle to another without needing our support. There are a few factors that do actually come into play. So let's talk about those. If you're experiencing excessive night waking, or even false starts where you're getting sort of one sleep cycle at night, your little one's waking after one sleep cycle. So firstly, the sleep pressure, has a real impact. So when the sleep pressure is nice and high, the chances of a little one going back to sleep really quickly and easily and not actually fully rousing between sleep cycles, so transitioning without fully rousing, is much, much higher. So most often I see this as a sleep pressure issue. If a little one is waking after every sleep cycle, most often their sleep pressure is just not high enough. And so we need to look at ways to increase that sleep pressure for nighttime to help them stop with this pattern of fully waking after every single sleep cycle. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is an element of normal here, that when we're talking about babies under one particularly, they need us. They need us to help them be calm, to go back to sleep, they may wake and look for us, and that's normal, especially during periods of separation anxiety. So developmentally, 6 months to 18 months is actually quite a long period where you can see separation anxiety, but it's particularly challenging around that 8 to 10 months age. So if they're waking looking for you to help them get back to sleep, or just looking for reassurance to know you're there is an aspect of that that's just normal. And I think it is important. And part of my work here is to normalize baby sleep and say, actually, that's normal. You know, you don't need to worry about that. So that can be a part of it, absolutely. And so, you know, we just need to know that sometimes our little ones do go through phases where they will need to have some help to get back to sleep. So yeah, I guess that those are the two biggest things that I see when you've got a little one that's waking that often, when you're experiencing that excessive night waking. Now, the other thing is that when we see these sleep regressions, what is generally happening at this time is that their sleep needs are changing. Yes, there's a lot going on in the brain developmentally at 4 months when they're often learning to roll, at 8 to 10 months when they're often starting to crawl and walk. Again, at around 13 months, we see a lot developmentally, and then again, often around 18 months. And so that sleep can take a hit at that stage because there's a lot going on in the brain. But also at this time, it's my opinion that sleep needs reduce, because we do see a change in sleep needs over time. Sleep needs do reduce over time. And so often it seems to happen quite quickly that suddenly the sleep needs reduce. And so what can happen then, if a little one doesn't adjust their pattern, you can start to see this disruption to the sleep regulation system, because all of a sudden the sleep pressure just isn't quite there. And so again, we come back to a sleep pressure issue with these frequent wakes, but we just really need to make some adjustments there to get the sleep back on track. So yeah, so those are the factors that I see are truly impacting sleep. Why it's not something you need to teach at all. Actually, rather, we need to look at what's going on biologically. And, you know, I am aware there's loads of gentle methods out there, that things like if your little one wakes between sleep cycles, say in the evening, go in, if they're kind of wake exactly spot on the money, 45 minutes after you put them down, go in at 40 minutes, pat them on the bum, you know, try and basically disrupt the sleep cycle so that it reboots it, and then they'll start to sleep longer. That's one of the, you know, gentle strategies that's out there. But really, in my experience, these things, they're a bit hit and miss as to whether they work, not really rooted in the science of the sleep. What we need to look at, and what makes the biggest difference by and large with all of the mums that I work with, is looking at these sleep regulators and looking at what's going on with the sleep pressure. And then also just being aware of developmentally what's normal and what's going on. And so, yes, sleep is not a skill. Takeaway message for today: you don't need to teach your baby to sleep. Okay, cool. So let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I'll just give people a minute. But yeah, if you're experiencing excessive night waking, a lot of false starts, difficulties in particular, maybe one part of the night, then do get in touch with me, and we can have a chat about what might be going on for you and your little one, and how I might be able to help you to get things back on track, because, you know, it is exhausting, especially if you've got a little one waking after every sleep cycle. It is really, really challenging. And so one question that I had earlier was, when do they start to naturally link their cycles, you know, or get over this? And so I think I just want to cover this for a sec. When people say sleep is developmental, I think there's a few aspects to that. I feel like the main aspect of sleep being developmental is that it comes down to, when does your little one, when are they ready to be able to maybe settle themselves a little bit more, to be able to, not self-soothe, because self-soothing actually takes quite a long time. But when they developmentally get to a point where they can feel like they're safe and need less support from you. And so that's in my experience, again, that's like a huge range. Some babies and their temperament, of being like pretty chilled kind of kids, bit more independent than others from a young age. Even you can notice in their personality from when they're a very small baby, they seem to do this a lot earlier than others. And some will still want that support from their parents for quite some time, into early toddlerhood. But if we see sleep, and I'm always talking about looking at sleep through a developmental lens, so seeing it through the eyes of child development, looking at it from that perspective. If we see it that way, then we know that as they get older, things tend to get easier, because developmentally they change so much and they get to the stage where they do need a little bit less support from us. And so this is, again, challenging the notion of bad habits, and, that you're somehow failing if you don't teach your baby to sleep or link their cycles, or, you're going to create a rod for your back and see more sleep issues. It's just not the case. It's just the case of where your little one is as an individual, where they're at developmentally, and what they can do. And some of it is temperament as well. Some little babies are much more likely to just, roll over, be happy to go back to sleep, while others do look for their caregiver. And that's out of your control. Why does my son sleep 2 or more sleep cycles in the car on me and not at nighttime if I put his cot on his own? Yeah, so that's it. That's kind of exactly what I was just saying. So it's about, in the cot on his at night on his own, he's feeling that, probably a separation anxiety thing. He's aware that you're not there. So he's more likely that during that transition between the sleep cycles, he's more likely to be waking looking for you. Whereas when he's with you and he can feel your presence during the day and your contact napping, that's where he's more likely between those sleep cycles. When he does go into the lighter phase of sleep, he kind of can feel your presence, he knows you're there, and he just goes back to sleep. And so, there is that developmental aspect there. And I know, Alicia, we, talk a lot about the sleep pressure, and that's kind of like, once you've optimized that, that's the main thing you can do in this situation. So we optimize that sleep pressure, we get that as good as it can be, we look at all of the parts of your day to get that as good as it can be. And then if that's, that's kind of optimized, then it's sort of like, okay, well, this may be developmental. Cool. So, alrighty. Well, that's all for today. So I hope that was helpful and gave you some insights, hopefully some relief. If someone's telling you need to teach your baby to link their sleep cycles, it's just not physically possible. This is not a skill we can teach. It's about really getting to the root of those sleep regulators, but also being mindful of what stage of development your little one is at. And if you need some help with any of this, then definitely reach out and we can have a chat. Okay, I will talk to you later. Bye.